The man who lost everything and still found a reason to smile. There are stories that hit you like a punch in the stomach, not because they're filled with explosions or drama made for the camera, but because they echo something deep inside us, something we don't always admit, but we all feel. This is the story of a man who watched his world collapse in silence and still managed to rise, not as a hero, not as a legend, but as someone who simply refused to disappear. Our story begins in a forgotten town, the kind of place most people only pass through without looking twice. It was in this town that Ethan lived. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, not a man of headlines. He worked quietly as a train station caretaker. His hands were always covered in rust and dust. His mornings started before sunrise, and he never needed an alarm. Ethan was the type of man who didn't chase greatness. He chased peace. But peace has a habit of slipping away just when you think you've found it. Ethan had a family once. A woman with laughter like warm bread fresh out the oven. A daughter who danced barefoot on the kitchen tiles. That kind of happiness, you don't capture it with a camera. You live it like a soft melody that plays when no one else is listening. But life, with its strange timing, tends to test those who've learned to smile the deepest. It began with a cough. Small, like a whisper. Then came the hospital visits, the waiting rooms with fluorescent lights and cold coffee. The kind of places where hope feels like a vending machine that just ate your last coin. His wife was diagnosed with a rare illness. Treatments came and went, hair on the pillow, smiles that began to fade. And in less than a year, Ethan stood in front of a coffin, holding his daughter's tiny hand, both of them staring at a silence too big to fill. Grief is a thief. It doesn't knock. It just walks in and rearranges the furniture in your soul. For a while, Ethan did what many do. He functioned. Clocked in, clocked out. Made sandwiches neither of them really ate. His daughter stopped dancing. He stopped listening to music. The house became more echo than home, and just when it felt like the grey had settled for good, fate turned cruel again. It was a rainy Thursday when it happened, one of those rains that feels like it's trying to scrub the world clean. The accident was quick. A truck that didn't stop, a call from a stranger, another funeral, another hole in his chest. Now alone, Ethan wasn't just grieving. He was hollow. A man made of shadows, walking through routines without meaning. Friends tried to help. But what do you say to a man who's lost everything? What words do you offer someone who now sleeps with framed photos instead of family? And yet, in that unbearable silence, something strange began to happen. One morning, Ethan walked to the station earlier than usual. The sky was still sleeping. As he swept the platform, he saw a small boy sitting on the bench, shivering, eyes red, clothes soaked. He wasn't speaking, just sitting. Ethan sat beside him, said nothing, just offered half a sandwich and waited. It became a pattern. Once a week, then twice. The boy, name was Luis, started talking, little by little. His story, another kind of loss, not death, just abandonment, a different kind of grief. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, Ethan listened. Not as a broken man, but as someone who could still offer warmth. Ethan started bringing 2 sandwiches every morning. One for him, one for whoever needed it. He didn't open a charity. He didn't start a movement. He just showed up. Quietly, steadily. And people noticed. A teenager pregnant and alone started leaving notes in the lost and found box, asking for advice. An elderly man whose wife had passed began sitting at the far end of the bench every Thursday, just to listen to Ethan's stories. One day, someone brought a guitar. Another, someone brought paint and covered the old station walls with murals. Bit by bit, the train station transformed, not into a monument, but into a place that held space for broken people to breathe again. Ethan didn't do this for recognition. In fact, he still refused interviews, cameras, praise, but the town changed, and so did he. Not because he found answers, but because he learned how to live without needing them. Grief doesn't vanish. Love doesn't replace what was lost. But Ethan taught something powerful without ever speaking it aloud. Even shattered hearts can become shelter for others. Maybe that's why this story matters, because it reminds us that sometimes healing doesn't look like rising up like a phoenix. Sometimes it looks like showing up with a sandwich. Sometimes it's just about staying when everyone else leaves. And if you're watching this, maybe there's an Ethan in your life. Maybe you are Ethan. Maybe you've lost so much you forgot how to feel. But here's the truth no one tells you loud enough. Survival is not the end goal. Connection is.